Hi, this is Paul. One of the fun things about the conference is that I sometimes get a chance to connect people on Twitter or people in YouTube comments with people's faces and people's real names. Now, a few of you slipped through my grasp because, they're telling me on Twitter, oh, it was great seeing you at the conference. And it's like, but you never came up and said, I'm so-and-so on Twitter. But one guy I was able to, and then I'll usually follow the people that I meet because why not? And he pointed me to this exchange with this tweet from Eric Weinstein that went like this. I have to be honest with myself. I've been studying and theorizing about immigration for a little less than 40 years now. I have never seen any population enthusiastically welcoming it. It is always force-fed to even the most xenophilic populations in my experience. But by whom? There are sky-high immigration numbers everywhere that are universally hated. Yeah, I don't know. There are nations that don't do immigration. And it's so funny because everybody's always beaten on poor Hungary, but Japan has never done immigration. They're like, nope. If you're not Japanese, maybe we'll let you live here for a little while, but you are not living here permanently. Japan is for the Japanese. And but nobody ever seems to give them grief on that. I'm not saying they should, but they've got as much population collapse as anybody else in the world. Anyway, and I'm sure somebody out there knows more about Japan and will correct me in the comment section. Please do. I say this as someone who wants modest levels of immigration. I think that's right. I think you should have controlled, modest levels of immigration, depending on sort of a mix of what's good for the nation, and you should have some humanitarian immigration. And this came up a bit at Midwestuary. It's like every country is being poisoned by zealous immigration that has been zero broad-based popular support. I don't get it. Who the hell is driving this excess and why? Everyone hates it, especially us xenophiles. I've all my, not all my life, when I have lived in rather homogeneous places, like even the Dominican Republic, it was Haitians and Dominicans. I love living in Sacramento, which is an outrageously diverse city. I loved living in the New York metropolitan area. That was very diverse. Grand Rapids, not quite so diverse, but more and more so over the last number of years. I mean, me and Eric Weinstein are sort of on the same page. Can anyone explain this? No easy answer, please. I've heard them all. And Danny Sukalowski, who did that conversation with Benjamin Boy, she wades in. And it was kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have her take all the stuff that she had in that video, just sort of put it in it's kind of a little short essay type tweet. She's like, I can. Yes, Danny, we all know what you're going to say, but say it anyway. This is part of the cycle of societal rise and fall. Excess immigration. Okay, and again, I got quite a bit of feedback on that video. It was very interesting because she's a polarizing figure. Some people just say BS to the whole thing. Some people just say, oh yeah, that's really interesting. And of course, my question was, we have these cycles. People can talk about the water cycle or something like that. And they have all of, materialists will do that. But of course, is this a spiritual cycle? What is exactly moving this? How are things moved? And again, it's so funny. This is another example of how our insufficient ontology just basically doesn't afford all of the things that we're pointing to. And for those of you who are sort of deep blue church, who are really, who are really skeptical about all this stuff, well, you figure out what exactly is moving beneath the surface, because things certainly are changing, and you use dynamics and this and that. But it was so interesting. I saw something today, I don't remember what it was, but it's so we live in this world of statistics. Oh, I remember what it was. It was this clip that someone sent me from Huberman.
People who engage with religion, not just say I believe in God, but actually engage with faith. Over a 15 to 20 year period, it cuts all-cause mortality by 30%, cuts death due to cancer and cardiovascular disease by 25%, reduces anxiety and depression, increases people's sense of meaning and feeling that their life is flourishing. Epidemiological data show that people...
Okay, now that little first epidemiological data show, it doesn't mean that these things are going to cut those percentages in my life, because what does a percentage really mean with respect to a sample of 1? Now, again, he's looking at generalization statistics, but that's... We sort of easily default to kind of that big picture, imagined cycle things are going. But again, I really liked the tweet, so I retweeted it. Excessive immigration imposed on a population is part of the fall, the societal rise and fall. It is driven by women, high intra-sexual competitive women. You see, women compete with other women, and this is really interesting because, of course, a lot of the pushback in the UK and other places in Europe is because of rates of, let's say, sexual violence against women, something like this. You see, women compete with other women for quality mates, resources, and status, as do men. This is called intra-sexual competition. In women, intra-sexual competition really ramps up around the time societies create a certain level of wealth and luxury. At this level of wealth, and now it's also interesting to me because we currently have this global society. And of course, there's the jump that, well, this is true of, let's say, a global society as it is in these other societies. And I hope she writes a book with footnotes and things, because all of the skeptics out there that really love footnotes and things, and then you can have them. You can have footnotes and things in the book that you'll probably never read. Maybe she's written it already. I don't know. But I find these ideas fascinating. And, you know, I sort of caught it from both sides with my video. People who are like really excited about that. Well, you weren't really fair to her. You were skeptical. Or people that I, just by virtue of presenting it, then people are upset that I'm sort of, you know, I'm doing the bad thing by putting ideas like this out there that other conservative or right wing or the baddies are putting out. And again, you can't just talk about an idea. There's this this binary gate thing where don't talk about this or agree with it completely, and it's like, in what way am I supposed to evaluate whether this is true or not? I have no idea, but I find it to be an interesting thing to talk about, so here we are. And if you don't find it interesting, click away. Where are we? Women start having fewer babies because each baby has a greater chance of survival. And again, I hear this and I think this supposed rise and fall narrative, how many times has this been true? I mean, infant mortality rates, I suppose, I don't know. Again, I don't know. And in the comment section, I'm sure you'll correct me, and that's what you usually do, and it's great. That you know, what were the different infant mortality rates between, let's say, Rome and Greece? And well, part of the problem is we just have no data for most of human history. And so we have all of these ideas about these cycles of human civilizations, and it's like, did the French civilization or the British civilization or the Mayan civilization or the Persian civilization or the, you know, just civilization after civilization that were a little bit more contained rather than this global one, did they rise and fall based on this? I mean, granted, she's just saying like, this is true, and it's like, well, maybe true, I don't know, it's interesting ideas. The reproductive benefits that used to be enjoyed by high-status women relative to low-status women due to their extra wealth became greatly diminished. Now, it's also interesting that we have this whole organic, naturist spirit going through our culture where everybody thinks like it's organic and natural. And one might imagine that Roman doctors maybe Roman obstetricians maybe increased the infant mortality rate because they had some dumb idea about how babies were born, and some woman out in the middle of Papua New Guinea had a better shot of it because it was natural. So now I'm questioning the whole natural organic spirit that's going through our culture. I don't know. I have zero idea. I'm sure smart people have tried to study these things, but how far back can you actually go in terms of the infant mortality rate in Papua New Guinea? Maybe geneticists can do this. I don't know. How am I supposed to know? Am I going to spend a lot of years of my life trying to figure that out? Maybe somebody will put a little study down in the comment section. Will they be believed? Probably not, because we only believe things according to the alignment that we are with this broad popular narrative. If Jordan Peterson said it, I believe it or I don't believe it. Or if the Republican said it or the Democrat, I mean, it's all so much crap. And then, oh, data, evidence. Yeah, right. Give me a break. In evolutionary terms, and then once you said that, now the whole bunch of people just left. In evolutionary terms, reproductive success is relative, not absolute. An individual woman can increase her own reproductive success either by having more of her own children or by suppressing the reproductive outputs of women around her. And again, we talked about that before. Is this a conscious thing? Is this an unconscious thing? And if it's not a conscious thing, it's like, well, that's kind of interesting what's sort of swimming around in our heads. Turns out high-status women really get on board with the latter. Women with greater susceptibility to social contagions are very prone to falling into line with dominant ideologies. The most dominant ideology that spread around this time, and again, if people just look at, why are young men getting conservative and younger women are getting more progressive? Well, you could just look at Big Five personality agreeableness. Men on average tend to be more disagreeable. Women on average tend to be more agreeable. So they say, what do I know? But I believe it. It sounds reasonable in all these metrics. And so you would imagine that women would sort of continue to go along with this prevailing narrative. And of course, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there that discuss this. The most dominant ideology that spreads around this time is what we call feminism, especially the brand of which devalues motherhood, despises femininity in women, condemns masculinity in men, and celebrates promiscuity amongst single women, while advising married women to deny their husbands any and all sexual pleasure for the most trivial reasons. We'll come back to that one. This is going to be a fun video. So stay tuned just until the end to help the algorithm. Maybe I'll play branding. I don't think I'm going to play branding because I don't have that much time. The net result of all of this is birth rate decline. While a minority of women continue to reproduce above the population average, many adopt the feminist uniform, replete with blue hair, septum ring, fallopian tubes in a vessel hanging around their neck, and either don't reproduce at all or do so at very low levels and in circumstances not conducive to successful child rearing. What does any of this have to do with immigration, Danny? Keep reading. I'm getting there. Good. This is fun. I like this. I mean, I always feel a little bad because Danny was a completely lovely person. Glad she talked to Benjamin. It was a fun video. I don't know how to evaluate her claims, quite frankly, and I don't know that many of us have too many ideas about how this all is supposed to work. And what are all these women doing who are not devoting their time to vocation of motherhood? They're working in all of the key institutions and industries that society relies on to function: education, healthcare, government, the civil service, NGOs, etc. And what policies are they promoting and installing in these institutions? Ones that continue to suppress reproduction and discourage motherhood. Over time, society becomes hostile to reproduction. Enmity of the womb, as someone said on stage at Midwestuary. See if you can figure out who if you weren't there. Shouldn't be too hard. It's a major theme of him. Birth rates continue their sharp decline. What are the men doing at this point in time, you might wonder? You might think that they would fight back, prop up their society's flagging economy, because the load-bearing institutions full of women do not just create a society hostile to motherhood. They also undermine the meritocracy with nice decisions. We call it DEI. But no, men show few signs of resistance. In fact, testosterone levels drop across the population. What's funny is that, her little story, it's like, yeah, I feel the pull. I feel the pull. Some of you say, fool. Oh, all right. Many men jump on board with the feminist rhetoric. And again, I think they jump on board with the feminist rhetoric because they want to sleep with women. Here's for those of you who don't know men, let me let you in on a little secret. Most men like sex. They do. They do. Ducks eat bread. Men like sex. They do. And many others embrace the only, with a rather facile version of masculinity that feminists endorse. In short, both men and women exhibiting change in their behavior and physiology that functions to bring their own society to its knees. This is the cycle. It's not the other cycle that's... This may seem like a supremely maladaptive thing to do, but the currency of evolution is relative reproductive success. Women driving these ideologies and bringing about these changes are talking the talk, but they're not really walking the walk. They're all marriage is oppression and women's and motherhood is prison, while being happily married to the wealthy masculine man and raising a handful of rugrats. They're all going after Andrew Huberman. Now again, how many other societies has this feminism erupted in? Because again, if this is this great cycle that keeps bringing down civilizations throughout the course of history, then surely we should be able to go back and see all of these civilizations and find ancient Stone Age feminism at work there. I don't know. Is there that? I have no idea. Again, most of human history we have no writing from. So... But you would think that we would find this writing at least in the civilizations we know. Did ancient Greek feminism bring down the Greek Golden Age? Did ancient Persian feminism bring down the Persian Golden Age? Did ancient Hebrew feminism cause the Babylonians to come and conquer them? Again, this is purported to be this massive civilizational cycle, but we seem to be on a rather unique civilizational pathway right now in terms of globalism and colonialism and the events that we've had since the Enlightenment. Anyway, let's continue. They're having fewer babies than their mothers and grandmothers did, but because everyone else is having fewer of them, they are winning. Society is collapsing, but they are winning. And there's a good point to this. And this is why, again, I find some of this really compelling, because if you read someone like David Brooks, he will point out again and again and again, as I've seen many people. Barack and Michelle Obama are faithful to each other. They have 2 children. They educate them well. They bring them up well. They are industrious. They are high in conscientiousness. They will be wealthy and successful. They'll probably marry men, have 2 or 3 children. Now, some of the Hollywood stars, as Michael Martin points out in his Twitter feed, not so much, but Michael Martin's Twitter feed is a fun one, but it's long been shown that the elites of society, they preach. They preach. Can I say this word? It's a hard word for me to say. Profligacy. There we go. If I say it slower, it's a little bit easier. Profligacy, but they live Puritan lives, and this has been noted for a very long time, and this is in favor of her thesis, okay? And again, if you're reading this, you're just spreading the slop. Well, it's a small channel. Slop I shall spread. But I find it interesting, and that's why I read it. Now, maybe it's a load of hooey. That could be. I don't know. But again, you do have to wonder why so many of the liberal elites practice monogamy, save their money, educate their children, despite the fact that they're wanting the Ivy Leagues to, to do different things. They're making sure their children get into the Ivy Leagues, and they're making sure their children go into the better jobs. And the elites do take care of themselves. That's why when this whole woke stuff came along, I thought this is wholesale hogwash. And in fact, I think you could probably put together a similar idea with respect to this idea, with respect to elites and money. They suppress the lower ranks. They allow for drug policies, and they allow for this. In fact, can go way beyond immigration. It can go to all sorts of other policies, because in many ways they're just maintaining their status. And David Brooks has written about this a lot. And I know a lot of you don't like David Brooks. Fair enough. But David Brooks has pointed this out a ton. Despite all of the imagined, well-meaning generosity and benevolence by the blue church high-status elites, they take care of their own. And a lot of the policies that they promote in sort of blue state America are ostensibly supposed to be good for the poor, but again, me living kind of at the lower level looking around, I mean, defund the police was a classic example of that. I remember when they defund the police, I thought, I've lived my lives listening to African American mothers begging city officials to police their communities more strongly and more strictly, often driving up African American incarceration rates, because if the street is chaos, it's no good for children. But, oh, we're going to give away drugs and we're going to just, and if you're living down amidst it, it's like, are you really helping them? Does giving people what they say they want really help? And I see this in mental illness. So there are many ways elites sort of maintain their own status by presenting this benevolent show that actually keeps the people down below in lives of misery and bondage, all the time saying, we're doing this for your own good. Oh, really? And again, you can see this with respect to marriage. Again, the elites stay married while the poor people marriage, and you can see this in society. You look at marital rates with respect to wealth. And this is not a new thing. So in fairness to her thesis, in many civilizations, marriage was really important with respect to money. And what religion tended to do was bring these strictures down to the lower levels and encourage. I saw this in Latin America, and you'd see this with the evangelical bump that people would call it in Latin America, because Catholics were sort of this older, more traditional society, but these little evangelical and charismatic churches were preaching at the men. You should not commit adultery. It's not okay to have a mistress. You should not drink. You should not smoke. You should not gamble. You should not do any of these things. And your money should go to the welfare of your children. And what would happen in these evangelical households in Latin America is that, no big surprise, their children would get an education and their children would begin to climb the social and economic ladders. And evangelicalism has been very good in Latin America because it's brought a lift, because in some of the traditional, and I'm not saying that Catholics are about this, because Catholics in North America will preach, very conservative things. I get it. But in Latin America, the idea was, if you're a Catholic man, you might have children with 3, 4, 5, 6 wives. You might have 24 children. But you're not taking care of any of them. And they all stay in poverty. And if you're an evangelical, well, then you're going to have 2, 3, 4 children. So there's a little bit of suppression. But you're going to really take care of those children. And intergenerationally, you're probably going to climb the ladder and be better off, because the church was serious about preaching and disciplining about vices and about marital fidelity and education and all of these things. And again, you can look at some really interesting studies that have shown places where conversionist Protestants did colonialism and taught literacy, because literacy is hugely important for the Protestants because of sola scriptura. Now, you might not like it, but as a writer on, it's a pretty good one for a society. And you'd see this lift in those countries as compared to countries that didn't have, let's say, sola scriptura and didn't teach literacy and all of those things. Well, literacy is sort of one of these building blocks that can sort of bring you up. And this is where immigration comes. If one of the things encouraged by feminized government is immigration, you see, if a reproductive strategy of serious population-wide reproductive suppression is to evolve, it needs an end game. A strategy that simply runs its own population into the ground brings on societal collapse and everyone dies out. It's not a winning strategy. Their way to win is to shrink the population down to a narrow bottleneck, and then they have it rapidly expand again. If you are lucky enough that your lineage is one of the few left in the bottleneck, then when the population explodes again, your genes will be strongly represented all throughout it, the ultimate evolutionary prize. Which, again, it's an interesting thing, but in the previous video, I'll put the link below, it has a thumbnail that looks like this. It's sort of Brett Weinstein. Well, your genetics are running the programming, and again, I'm not doubtful that there's things beneath the waterline that are moving us one way or another. I think psychology has demonstrated that there's a lot below the waterline that's moving us one way or another. Could there be Adaptation over generations, that seems pretty clear, but there's also a lot of other things that come in back and forth and go different ways. This is why immigration is encouraged, and why it is especially encouraged from countries that are decidedly less progressive than the countries they are immigrating to. Immigration is needed from societies that are in a very different phase of the rise and fall cycle. And again, was birth control a part of this rise and fall cycle? Because it's certainly a part of what's going on now. So I got a lot of questions about it, you know. So I'll wait for the book. Will I read the book? Will I read the footnotes? We'll see. If Danny would like to come on my own channel and have this conversation at some point, we could probably fit her in. It'd be a fun conversation. I love people. I love all kinds of people. So Danny, if you watch this video and you want to come on, I'd be more than happy to have you. Because you were a fun interview. That was clear. And why this? And one of the things that you can have a conversation about is how politeness and sociability impact a conversation in a video, because they have a big impact, because nobody wants to be a jerk to each other. So, and it isn't all facts. We're going to debate facts. If we like each other, we tend to believe each other. That's how we are. Immigration is needed from societies that are in a very different phase of the rise and fall cycle. So when the host society's birth rate declines sufficiently and its institution weakens society rather than simply disappearing, the new society emerges and begins to rise. It's a combination of few survivors from the host society's self-induced bottleneck and more recent arrivals. You said no easy answers. And, you know, it's interesting because when you look at, let's say, replacement societies, there are some videos. I got pulled into a YouTube rabbit hole about Christianization among the Slavs. There's a whole group of videos. It was right after. It was interesting because, again, algo is watching below the surface, and I think it was after I watched this video, then suddenly I get all these videos about, you know, how did Christianity how did the Slavs sort of conquer that part of the world in short order without any big wars? And the reality is that their minds were conquered and they changed. And so I remember talking to some young women once who were joking about, you know, they were kind of joking about their high school, people in their high school that got married young and were pregnant, were already having kids, and these women were sort of climbing the ladder, and they weren't going to have kids anywhere near their 20s, and, you know, maybe not ever, because they get into their 30s and they can't have them, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what do you call these women who are having, all these conservative women who are having pregnant, you know, having children young? And they kind of looked at me. I said, you might call them voting Republicans or voting conservatives. It's like there's a replacement thing. And someone was mentioning Israel and Israeli birth rates. And part of that, of course, is because of the highly observant people there, but part of it is also they're in a population race with their surrounding communities, and that's a very old thing. I've spoken before about you know, possibilities of, well, anyway, in the ancient world, when you've got much higher infant mortality, women who have many sons are heroes in the country because those sons grow up to be soldiers, and they grow up to be workers, and their daughters grow up to be birthers, and for most of human history, a burgeoning population was seen as a very good thing. And it's not until the end of the 20th century that people begin to sort of rewind that thing. Oh, where was I going to go with this? Oh, yeah. Michael Sartori. I love Michael. There's definitely some truth to this concept. They made a movie 10 years ago that laid it out in black and white. Unfortunately, it had a negative effect on making Cinderella look too good, perhaps inspiring young women to adopt her virtues, kindness, and courage, and forgiveness. So 10 years later, they made another movie that demonstrated the same point. They made it unwatchable. The reproductive sabotage ruined the movie's aesthetics to make sure it didn't appeal to the wrong sort of stepdaughters. It's not as bad as Jonathan Peugeot said it was, but the controversy did its job. Although the real injustice is the inter-dwarfish role suppression, when Peter Dinklage complained not only did he subject us to bad CGI dwarves, but he robbed dozens of dwarf actors and stuntmen of the opportunity to make decent paychecks. So you've got the intra-dwarf rivalry job suppression. Michael said, there's a reason that man wrote an 800-pound book within the course of just a few months. That young man is going places. You mark my words. His channel, Sartori Studios, might be small now, but WWF or WWE or whatever your acronyms are, you watch out. Sartori is coming for you. So one of my favorite YouTube conversations was with Laura and Sam on the question of why is the church today so sex positive when the ancient church was so sex negative? I'll put the links below. We did that conversation, and then we did a live stream on it with, we had Michael Martin, we had Tripp, we had Mo, we had Laura back, we had Luke, and those were fun live streams. That was a lot of fun. How long ago did we do that? We did that 2023. That was totally fun. And it is such an interesting topic because, of course, if you listen to the Collinses, they'll keep promoting religion as that which sort of continues to increase the birth rate. And I think there's certainly some truth to that. But it's also interesting, the point that Sam and Laura made was just so absolutely interesting and right. And I talk to Orthodox people now, and they tell me things. You know, I had a conversation on the channel from a really lovely conversation with a lovely woman who talked about her father. The family had split up, he had remarried, but he was a faithful and loyal Catholic. And so in order to get back into the good graces of the Catholic Church, he and his second wife had a Josephite marriage. What does that mean? That means that they went to the priest and they promised not to have sex as husband and wife. I've heard rumors that, and please, I want to hear about this. AI didn't tell me a lot about it. I'm still using LLMs. And when the videos come out from the conference, you'll know why I'm pausing. But I hear tell that some in the Orthodox Church think that after a certain age, husband and wives, maybe it'd be a good thing if they didn't do it. Now that sent me down a little bit of YouTube searching. And, well, that's in, let's say that's sort of different from, you know, it was a few months ago that Chad sent me some of these videos on the Marcus, the Aubrey Marcus thing, where he's basically his new evolved monogamy, polygamy, polyamory, where now he's got 2 wives and he wants to have them both pregnant.
Can bring up the specific example.
Well, I mean, the recent example in the spiritual community is the, you know, kind of laughable clips going around of Aubrey Marcus saying that the divine feminine spirit Isis spoke to him, and in this divine download that he received on his 699th ayahuasca ceremony, that he was told to go on Raya to find another beautiful woman, that he has been the chosen one, that he must impregnate 2 of these ladies. And that was, you know, that was spoken. And you maybe think when you hear something like that, the God that was speaking to him might just be his dick, that he has become to believe that he's so tapped in. And again, to Aubrey, I think he's done an enormous amount of good, mostly. Like he's lots of good for a lot of people.
For sure.
But maybe it just goes a step too far sometimes, and I don't think when he put that out it was received remotely like he thought it was going to be received. I think he thought people were going to be like, wow, you're so evolved, Aubrey, this is amazing. But most people see it for what it is this time, and it was like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
What are you doing, bro?
Yeah. You know, I saw the clip and I thought, and the clip I saw was a pretty ingenious skit that was kind of created. This guy, Nick,
another one,
Nick Sway, and he was like the Department of Elimination of Organic.
Yeah,
it was pretty genius. And it's like basically this demonic force like whispering into Aubrey's ear, like, yeah, you think this is God?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
has Grim Grizz commented? Because Aubrey Marcus does not have enmity of the womb. But again, this is a ancient civilizational practice where high status men have concubines, and I've talked about Elon Musk with his concubines. Ancient potentates had harems, and Elon Musk is quite a bit higher than Aubrey Marcus, but if you're in a Muslim nation, you can have 2, 3, 4 wives. Mark Twain on Brigham Young was just absolutely hysterical. It's just listening to Roughing It Again when I was on vacation, and Twain is just hysterical. But, Aubrey Marcus, he's got a decent-sized YouTube. He should, 2 wives, maybe 10, 15 kids. And is this the other end of the cycle where we're coming around again? And, here's an LLM that's, just sort of quickly summarizing videos, and it's a way that I can sort of, well, here's a video that looks kind of interesting. Instead of sitting there and listening to 16 minutes of it, I can just sort of get a little outline of it. Quick a minute. The spiritual health of every child begins in the way the child is conceived. And I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting. The union of married couples should be a deeply mysterious and sacred relationship, not just a union of 2 bodies, and should be treated as part of the mystery of the relationship. I agree with that. The approach to marital relations should be one of holiness, with the couple participating in the creation of human beings. With this participation should be amazing and unique. Well, that sounds great. The life of the child in the womb is determined by the life of the mother during pregnancy and by the life of the couple, and spouses should not come together sexually during this time.
Right? So this is extremely important. Obviously, it's pretty obvious that that's going to be really, really important.
I hate it when that happens. Come on.
Eurodis Galactia, newly shown forth in Crete, and Metropolitan himself. The question now of the child in the womb. After the child is conceived, its life is determined by the life of the mother during her pregnancy, and in general by the life of the couple. All right, so this is extremely important. Obviously, it's pretty obvious that that's going to be really, really important. What the couple's doing, how they're acting, their spiritual state of things is going to affect the child. I don't think that's controversial. During the course of the pregnancy, spouses should not come together sexually. Even if there are different psychologists and doctors who say that there is no problem before the 9th month of pregnancy. He says, I don't care what your psychologist says. I don't care what your doctors say. I'm telling you a spiritual lesson here. They don't have any idea about spiritual life. I'm telling you as a spiritual father, as an elder, and of course now we're sitting at his feet as a saint, a God-bearing elder and father, and he's saying this is what you need to do if you want to have a holy child. And he says the child is disturbed by the intimate relations of its parents. It is shocked, and it is participating in
this I'd never heard.
This erotic relationship between its parents. It's participating right there, obviously. It's all right there. It is a mistake when spouses think that they're the only ones present. No, the child is also present, and the child collects within it the desires of its parents. Now, the fleshly-minded ones, the ones who trust science and psychology more, are going to reject this word of the saint. I understand that. And there are many in the church, including bishops, who are going to say, nonsense. We have science today. We have psychology. They know better than Saint Porphyrius. Okay, God bless you. Don't follow the saint. You are free. Just like the Jews in the synagogue in Capernaum and the disciples who walked away, you're free. But that's the word of the saint, and not just this saint. We saw St. Finian. We saw St. Gregory the Theologian, and many other saints and canons of the church, as we'll see in a minute, that say, no, that's not how we're going to do it. We need to be careful.
I'll cut to the reading here. According to Holy Fathers, homosexuals are people whose attractions are determined to a great degree by the sexual behaviors of their parents and grandparents. The Holy Fathers have taught us in the Holy Scripture that a person is determined at the moment a couple does not have natural relations and attitude during the course of pregnancy. of some sort of unnatural relation, anal or oral, takes place between the parents during the course of the pregnancy, when the strong desire may be passed to the child, and this can determine the sexual behavior of the child when this unfolds during adolescence. It's a very powerful but also theological informed interpretation. Even if the sins of the parents and ancestors are passed down to children and descendants, even as this leads to their turning towards carnal desire, God is not unjust. There is healing. The therapy, or at least the reining in of those carnal passions, according to Holy Fathers, is persistent and tenacious prayer to Christ and the only pure and immaculate Virgin, the Theotokos Mary. This healing comes through the struggle for conscience repentance, not only for those. Wow. And so, you know, part of this got sprung because I saw Steve Skojec. Steve Skojec was on, of course, Steve Skojec had left the Catholic Church, and he was on Twitter. Basically, one of his things on Twitter was like, you know, how dare these women out there say men don't need sex? And it's true. Men can live without sex. Men can live without sex. Men can't live without food. Celibacy is a fine thing, and I respect Roman Catholic priests who live chaste lives, and I respect young people who live chaste lives before marriage, and I respect people as they get widows and widowers who live chaste lives. I respect all that. I'm not skeptical about that, but the ways these things are going in different directions is just sort of breathtaking. And then a couple of weeks ago, someone recommended this channel to me, the Happy Wife School, and the thumbnail was, well, surprising secrets why your wife holds about sex. Now, I had found, and I had shared, there are a couple other what men think about sex versus reality. It's a Substack therapist writing these. I didn't think these were so bad. Samantha Rodman Witten, she's not a Christian, but seemed to have some valid things to say. What men think about sex versus reality, what women think about sex versus reality. If I can find them, I'll put the links down below. And so then I use my little AI, and because in a video like this, you get frustrated because it's a 40-minute video, and the main thing is 10 myths, and it's like, all right, give me the list. AI will do that. Of course, sort of strip the list right out of there, so I don't have to necessarily, you know, play the whole video for you. Saves me a lot of time and save you a lot of time. And 10 myths and the surprising secrets of your wife holds about sex. And so these are things. Size matters. The belief that larger size is necessary for full enjoyment about sex. Sex is supposed to be spontaneous and passionate. The idea that spontaneity creates excitement and embrace. Anyway, and again, this isn't bad stuff. She's a Christian, and I think it's a perfectly good video. But just the difference in valence of what we have going on here is just so fascinating. And I'll put the link below to this video too. And apparently she's got lots of. I think this is her thumbnails are women. It's a reasonable quest. Why we disappear. Stop making sex a chore. So this is kind of a, yeah. And the fact that she's growing on YouTube, I'm not surprised. The red pill for women. Oh, that's her thing. The YouTube male-oriented thing. A lot of frustration out there because of what I told you about men before. And it's complicated. Sex is really complicated in a long-term monogamous relationship. There's a lot going on between a couple at any given time, and sex, you have different stages in life with respect to it. So it's not my area of expertise. You can find lots of advice on YouTube with respect to it, but again, all this mystery about what moves us and how we move and what makes channels grow But my favorite idea was the intra-dwarf-job-suppression. You mark my words. Satori Studios, they're going to go far. Leave a comment.